For the fourth time in 2019, Benoit Bincaz and Adam Raga qualified to the same round 2 heat. Jorge Casales bookending his season with progression from the opening phase to mirror his efforts at the start of the campaign in Budapest. Having finished 6th in round 1, Casales had the advantage of riding first out through the new sections for the second lap. The Spaniard put together a consistent outing that set a competitive marker for his heat rivals Bincaz and Raga. Casales had never before finished higher than 6th position, so his qualification to round 2 was once again an opportunity to show he can mix it with the world's best. And that was exactly what he did at X-Trial Andorra the Vella. Only an errant mark for leading was conceded by Casales in the first 2 sections, his opening clean his only such result of the lap, but nor did Casales fail any sections, and that fact kept his round 2 score in single digits, an improvement even on his opening round effort. Sections 3 and 5 each cost him a pair of marks, but he used those dabs when he needed to continue on through the course in a consistent fashion. Only his 2 marks in Section 5 will have come with some frustration, because after a single dab in his penultimate outing, he made it most of the way through his final ride before conceding further marks. In fact, the 2 drop marks in Section 5 came after he'd already surmounted the last of the steps, a misjudgment as he repositioned himself, slipping him back to a mark for leaning, and a foot needed as well for him to continue to progress. Nonetheless, the 6-mark total was a highly promising start to the heat stages, and Casales' rivals would need to avoid failures to give themselves the best possible chance of beating him. Having finished 4th in the 2018 X-Trial World Championship, Benoit Bincaz arrived in Andorra only 5th in the standings and somewhere adrift of both Gironi Fajardo and Jaime Busto. The only way to beat either of the Gascas representatives overall in 2019 was to win the X-Trial, a tall order, but one for which he was clearly highly motivated. To have a hope of making his first final, Bincaz would have to beat Jorge Casales' 6-mark tally and wait to see if Adam Raga could improve further. But in the end, Raga's ride proved largely academic to the Frenchman's bronze medal hopes, as he failed to beat Casales following a mid-lap error. The night's key hazard, a slanted module that had already caught out several riders in the round 1 direction, claimed its latest victim in Bincaz. Despite having become the first rider to fail a section in round 2, his chances of making it through to the consolation final still appeared to be strong. His earlier mistake, though, had left him no further room for error. Within sight of the gate at the end of the lap, he hit a lip in the section, took a mark for footing, and dropped out of contention for the world number 3 ranking. With Adam Raga still to come, the best Bincaz could now hope for was an unlikely place in the consolation final. Favourite to progress from Heat 1, and even more so now after 2 errors from Benoit Bincaz, Adam Raga kept a cool head to book his qualification space to the grand final for the 4th time in 2019. On such a low-scoring lap, even slight misjudgments were punished severely, but Raga called on all of his experience to beat Jorge Casales by a 2-mark margin. There'd been nothing in it between them after the first 3 sections, though, Raga very nearly dropping to a failure in Section 3, miraculously controlling the bike, but taking 3 marks as he steadied the ship with a determination that proved crucial in his qualification. Because like the 2 riders before him, he conceded a mark in Section 4, so if he had failed Section 3, he would have sat on the same total as Jorge Casales with a section still to come. Instead, he held a 2-mark advantage, one which he nursed to the finish with a 3rd clean of the lap recorded in an error-free Section 5. Victory in Heat 1 confirmed his progression to the final. Jorge Casales satisfied enough with a place in the consolation final for the first time. Just 3 marks covered the trio of Heat 1 riders, Sections 3 and 5, the main distinguishing areas of the course. A single fiasco for Benoit Bincaz eliminates him from the night's competition at the bottom of the standings. The lineup for Heat 2 threw together 3 riders of vast experience with an average age of 35 and over 300 appearances between them. The oldest rider in the field, Takisa Fujinami, was the first out among them. Having finished just a mark behind Gironi Fajardo in round 1, he was the biggest threat to the Spaniards' charge towards the bronze medal. But the Japanese veteran's night unravelled with an unexpected Section 2 fiasco. In a section cleaned by 2 riders in Heat 1, Fujinami failed the first step, his minder catching the front wheel too soon when the Japanese rider had made a misjudgment and attempted to jump back for a second attempt. After a further 2 marks in Section 3, which he attempted in a completely different fashion and rode with relative success, Fujinami was already on 7 marks, which hadn't been enough for Benoit Bincaz to progress from Heat 1. All he could do now was attempt to keep his scores as low as possible and wait for the results of the remaining Heat 2 competitors, Fujinami doing everything in his power by becoming only the second rider to notch 3 cleans in round 2. As the first rider cleaned through Section 4 and the second error-free in Section 5, Fujinami was guaranteed at least 5th position by virtue of tiebreak with Benoit Bincaz. The battle for the bronze medal has been a talking point throughout 2019 thanks to a reinvigorated Gironi Fajardo taking the fight to Jaime Busto within the Gas team. Having already gained 11 points on Busto at Extra Marseille in March, Busto's capitulation in round 1 meant his rival only needed to secure a top 4 finish to move above him in the championship. Attempting to beat Takehisa Fujinami's 7-mark score was therefore a pivotal moment in his season overall, and one that he took to with some nerves, 2 marks already conceded by the time he arrived at Section 3, under pressure. Fajardo was not about to waste the golden opportunity presented to him by his inexperienced teammates' cataclysmic round 1 underperformance, although he came perilously close after a mark for leaning on the first step before he even came to Section 3's main obstacle. Passing the lap's halfway mark with a 3-mark score there, and now on a total of 5, Fajardo had only 2 to play with and the same number of sections to ride, but he replicated Fujinami's cleans in Sections 4 and 5 to ensure his place in at least the consolation final, and with it the final step on the championship podium for the 3rd time in his X-Trial career. Tony Bou's task was more demanding than Adam Ragga's had been in Heat 1, the target total of 5 marks set by Gironi Fajardo, one better than Jorge Casales' effort in the opener. But Bou never looked concerned, even under the real pressure that just one failure could leave him out of contention. He was efficient in terms of scoring, raising his run of consecutive cleans up to 18 before he finally dropped his first mark of the night. None had made it clean through Section 3, and even Bou could not make an exception of himself this time, needing a dab with his right foot as he made it through. Now with only 4 marks to play with, but tackling 2 sections cleaned by Fujinami and Fajardo, Bou remained favourite to progress, even if the fans had been surprised by his first drop mark of the night. Such had been his high standard of riding. Nothing could stop him in Sections 4 and 5 as he became the first to clean 4 sections in round 2, and in the process defended a 3-mark lead over Adam Ragga to ensure top seeding position to the grand final. Another low-scoring heat with the 3 competitors separated by 6 marks. Takehisa Fujinami's Section 2 failure proving costly as he is eliminated. Gironi Fajardo and Tony Bou marching on. For the first time in his career, Jorge Casales makes the Final 4. All Spanish pairs for both the consolation final and the grand final here tonight. For the 3rd place playoff, we repeat the first 4 sections from rounds 1 and 2, but this time with just 1 minute to negotiate the course in both directions. Jorge Casales, who failed in the return direction in round number 1, gets underway first through this first section. Gironi Fajardo will come next up. Casales, the 23-year-old Spaniard, comfortably his best result of the 2019 campaign, regardless of the outcome here. 6th in Budapest, 8th in Barcelona. Casales now on the return direction, which he failed in the early stages of competition here tonight. He's still clean in Section 1 of this consolation final. Strong start, but it's the latter stages here that will be his biggest challenge. 1 mark drop for leaning there. That will be a second, a foot down. And it's game over for Jorge Casales by accumulation of marks in Section number 1. What a shame for him. He was in a rush there in the latter stages. Plenty of obstacles for these riders to tackle in a short amount of time. Casales with 5. Gironi Fajardo's got off to a stuttering start to this Section number 1. Dropped 1 mark in each direction in the 2 rounds so far. He's taken 2 marks there. One for leaning as he eventually made his way up that first step, but I thought that was going to be a bigger problem than it eventually was. It looked as though Fajardo was slipping off the back of the bike. Jorge Casales had done far better in the outbound direction than Gironi Fajardo did there. He's on 2 marks, Fajardo. One more mark he can afford. He takes it there for leaning. Now, if Fajardo drops any more marks in the remainder of this section, it will be a failure, and he and Casales will both be on 5 after this section number 1. Can Fajardo keep it clean through the rest of this section to take a 2-mark early lead? His assistant watching on. Fajardo will bound across. Nicely done from Gironi Fajardo. Momentarily, it looked as though he might slip back onto the sump, and that would have been game over in section 1. But Gironi Fajardo makes it through with a 3-mark total, and it's Casales 5, Fajardo 3. Section 2. Casales and Fajardo have been evenly matched through this section tonight, both dropping a single mark in the round 2 direction. Round 2 direction first up in each of these 4 consolation final sections. Casales making his way through has accrued 1 mark already here, so much the same as we saw in the early stages of the competition. Difficulty level raised quite dramatically for both the consolation final and the final, with 2 directions and only 1 minute in which to complete them. So no time for Casales to waste as he immediately embarks on the inbound direction of this section number 2. Very little room for error now for Casales as he trails by 2 marks. And with only 4 sections in total, he needs to be absolutely on his A-game here and hope for errors from Gironi Fajardo. Jorge Casales, nicely done, with 5 seconds remaining at the end there of section number 2. He moves on to 6 now. A single mark in the outbound direction. He just gets an explanation of where those marks have come from our section observer here tonight, as Gironi Fajardo gets underway with section number 2, and a struggling start there. Fajardo almost didn't make it up at all. Eventually he catches his balance and continues on. 1 mark for Casales moved him on to 6. Fajardo at the moment is on 3 and could gain another mark here if he can remain clean through the rest of section number 2. So far, so good for Fajardo. He wheels around, slowly, taking his time here, Gironi Fajardo. May have to sprint later on in this section, bearing in mind that Casales only finished with 5 seconds to spare. It's very much Fajardo who has the advantage here of seeing Casales first out and knowing exactly what he needs to do to remain in the lead of this X-Trial. Just 1 mark there for Gironi Fajardo for leaning. And it's back to 4 versus 6. Well, it's back to 2 marks between them. 2 sections remaining. Halfway mark in this consolation final. The battle for the 3rd step on the podium here tonight. It would be Jorge Casales' first ever podium if he can manage it. First step of section 3, very nicely achieved. The balance of this section has been against Fajardo tonight. Both riders failed here in round 1. Casales put in one of his best rides here in round 2. Casales the man under pressure as he trails by 2. Section 3 has been the toughest all night. Can Casales get through it? He really is having to take his time here. Balances himself very nicely on that landing. He's taken another mark for footing, so it's 2 in the first direction. Not many riders have managed to complete that hazard as elegantly as Casales did there, even though he did take 2 marks. Different approach for Casales in this consolation final. What can he do in the latter stages of section 3? He's only got 1 more mark to play with. Time is ticking away. It's going to be a problem for Casales, who has to rush here. Assistant waiting at the top of the section. The crowd urging him forward. Casales bouncing into position with the back wheel, and he's out of time. It's a failure in section number 3 for Jorge Casales. He still had the final step of the section to surmount, and an accumulation of marks was leaving him in an awkward position anyway, but that's frustrating for Casales because he would have looked at section 3 as an opportunity. Gironi Fajardo having struggled here earlier on here tonight. If Fajardo drops a maximum of 1 mark here, he will be assured of his place on the podium. Anything else, and we go to a last section decider. Jorge Casales achieved the outbound direction with some alacrity. Gironi Fajardo's got it wrong. Fajardo off the side of the section then. And Casales' agonising wait to find out whether he's done enough to make the podium will continue to section number 4. Casales now cannot fail this section, or he will give third place tonight to Fajardo with a ride to spare for our current leader. Jorge Casales in his 9th Extra World Championship appearance, and his best, undoubtedly. But will it result in his first career podium as well? Elegant stuff early on in section 4. 1 mark drop, though, for leaning on that first step. That moves him on to 12. Now 3 marks between the two of them. Casales under a great deal of pressure here. Must get through this section. 2 failures in 3 so far, so it will be a tall order for him to beat Gironi Fajardo. But if Fajardo gets it wrong and Casales does the job in the remainder of this section 4, the podium could still be on for the Spaniard. Here he goes, rushing now in the second direction of section 4. That was a great leap and perfect landing. Section observer still marking just 1 so far in terms of penalty marks against Casales, who will sprint through this final step, and he's looking good to be out of section number 4. Curse of the commentator almost, as the back wheel threatened to slip away from him, and he's through. Jorge Casales with a single mark score as well, just about in time. So that puts him on 12. Heard the klaxon sound as the front wheel was already out of the section. Good news for Casales. His hopes of third place here tonight continue. Gironi Fajardo on the first step of section 4 has already conceded a mark. He has a maximum of 2 to play with to guarantee the final step on the podium here at Extra Andorra La Vella. If he drops 3, it'll be a tie with Jorge Casales. 1 so far for Fajardo. So far, so good. He's got to keep a cool head here. Not under a great deal of pressure, of course, with 3rd in the world already secured. Totally different rider in 2019 to what we saw last year, Fajardo. Finished last campaign 28 points behind teammate Jaime Busto, and down in 6th in the standings. He's guaranteed 3rd this year. Even more remarkable for the fact that he's done so as an event rider, earning qualification from 1 round to the next. That's 2 marks now for leaning. Gironi Fajardo must get through the rest of this section without dropping a further mark. He's on 11, Casales on 12. Gironi Fajardo under pressure then for a podium place this. Final step. And Gironi Fajardo has done it! 3rd position for Fajardo. Again, the klaxon sounds just as Fajardo gets the front wheel out of the section. It's as tight as you like, but Gironi Fajardo has done it by a single mark margin over Jorge Casales. And section 1 proving critical between the two of them as Gironi Fajardo takes his 3rd podium finish of the campaign. A 3rd place finish at the start of the season in Budapest, runner-up ranking last time out in Marseille, and 3rd place here in Andorra La Vella.